Welcome back to the Today with Tally podcast, folks. We have a great show in store for you today. We're going to be sitting down with a major currently with the Galveston County Sheriff's Department who's running to be your next sheriff in Galveston County. But first,
hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
Ray Nolen. He's been a cop now for over 30 years. Now, he is a major, like I was saying, with the Galveston County Sheriff's Office. He is a strong conservative leader who has worked tirelessly over the last 30 years to preserve your constitutional rights and keeping the streets of Galveston County safe. He plans on doing this same thing moving forward after March 5th. The only difference is this time he will be representing you as the next sheriff in Galveston County. And with that, we are honored to be joined by Major Ray Nolen, Galveston County Sheriff. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, sir, the pleasure is all mine. I was out at a political rally for a man running for Congress up here in my neck of the woods, and you had a lot of supporters out at this political event I was at, and they were out handing out Ray Nolen for Congress little baggies here with the Constitution in it. And I saw it. I'm like, I got to look this guy up. It's not very often you get a Constitution handed to you from somebody that's actually, again, that's running to be a sheriff, to be the top cop in your county. And I think that's pretty impressive right there, that you're willing to do that, to stand by the principles of what this Constitution actually means, to give the people the voice and the rights that they deserve.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you're running for sheriff today, or you are a sitting sheriff, and you're not in a position mentally to know that one of your first and foremost priorities is to protect the people's Constitution, you're in the wrong place.
Absolutely. You know, there is a sheriff that I follow, and I'm going to call him America's sheriff right now. I mean, there's so many great sheriffs out there, but Riverside County, California, Sheriff Chad Bianco, great guy. He is always right in the line of fire there in Southern California, but he lives in a conservative district.
Right.
But Riverside County is massive. Okay. So you got tons of different, people there, but he keeps getting voted in because he is a constitutional, first great sheriff in everything that he's doing. And he's standing up against, a very tyrannical type government around him. And he keeps winning. And he's got a very great department, very high morale there in Riverside County. And he's surrounded by, other departments that have very low morale, because a lot of those folks aren't really keeping up their end of the deal when it comes to protecting the people through the Constitution of the United States. And that's allowing people to keep and bear arms. And, they go by the law of the land, not by the law of some bureaucrat who's been put into office just by hearsay. You know what I mean?
Right. A lot of people don't realize that your sheriff is your first line of defense in protecting your constitutional rights at home on American soil. And it's very important that your sheriff have that mindset that is their number one priority.
Explain that first line of defense.
Yeah, first line of defense. So your sheriff is, for your county, is your top law enforcement official by state statute. They're responsible for all criminal process. Your constables are responsible for all civil process. But for criminal process, your sheriff is your highest level of law enforcement. And that means that they need to protect you from tyranny, constitutional right, infringements. They're your first line of defense. If they're not defending you, who will? And I feel really bad for a lot of these counties that have liberal sheriffs, because we know that their abilities or their mindset to protect the constitutional rights of the people they serve may or may not be a priority. We see that with the border crisis, right? We have a border crisis. We had our governor ask the sheriffs for assistance down at that down on the border, and we had very few sheriffs that were either able to assist because of resources or were willing to assist. And I was proud to say that Galveston County was one of the first counties to assist. Kinney County down with the border at the border crisis, we started in August of 21, and we're still down there, and we're going to be down there until we're not needed anymore. And again, I tell a lot of my constituents here that while my number one priority is Galveston County, I'm very glad to be able to say that Galveston County is assisting with the border crisis down in Kinney County.
Love it. And that's great. Like Texas State, we all need to come together and rally the support down there on the southern border. It has been an absolute war zone down there for the last 3 years, and really no signs of it letting up. Governor Abbott has, made some good, changes down there, involving the ports of entry, but still it's an uphill battle, especially when the federal government is fighting everything that the state is trying to do to protect its sovereignty. So it's very frustrating, not only for folks like me who are just average, everyday American citizens and Texans, but it's got to be frustrating for folks like you in power.
For sure. Yeah. And we're seeing, a lot of people are of the mindset that, well, it's way down there at the border, but it's spilling into all areas of our state. We've seen it in Galveston County. We've had a lot of our known drug dealers in the county that we try to monitor and survey and keep up with them just fall off the grid, And so when we start asking around, doing a little research, where are they? We found out that they've given up selling drugs and they're down there smuggling illegals across the border because it's so much more lucrative. And so when you have drug dealers giving up selling drugs to go down there and bring illegals across the border into our state and our country, that kind of highlights for you the magnitude of how big the problem is. But Governor Abbott has really stepped up the border security with bringing in the National Guard. And my deputies that are down there right now are telling me that the number of incidents of illegal crossings has diminished significantly. And that's really good to hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Texas has kind of pushed them along, if you will, to the west. So, in encounters in, say, New Mexico, Arizona, and in California are now on the increase as they're down in Texas, but they're still coming through.
They're still coming.
And that's what I don't understand is like, why don't we say, no, you can't come in. We're full. It's like we have like, it's not their right for us to just allow everybody in, open turnstile. I mean, this is the United States of America, and we do have laws, but they're not being enforced.
Absolutely.
On the federal level. And again, it's disturbing because every state has become a border state. We have a lot of issues going on in the country when it comes to, like, say, food distribution, medical services. We have anywhere between 10 to 15 million illegal aliens that have come over in the last 3 years. And those folks need clothes, they need food, they need, water. They say, oh, we're running out of water. Oh, well, if you allow an additional 10 to 15 million people in this country, they're going to be taking up more of those resources. Well, what about traffic? Cars. A lot of those cars aren't even insured. So when they get into an accident, who's at fault now? Well, the American is. It's almost as if the more you contribute to your country or your community in an honorable way, the more you're punished. And the less you contribute these days, the more you are rewarded. And again, it's all backwards here. And I'm trying to kind of wake up from this bad dream that started in 2020. But perhaps this is the year we change things. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems inverted, our processes. You teach your children how to do things the right way and work hard. And then, they see so many people going around the system, not following rules and regulations, and it's paying off for them. And it's because as a society, we're not holding people accountable. There's got to be an end point to this, or else Lord knows what this country is going to be like. But there's got to be an end game to this. And I think it starts with people just standing up and saying enough's enough. And certainly your sheriff needs to be one of those people. And I always want to, remind everybody that, as a sheriff candidate, I completely support and condone the process of legally coming into this country as an immigrant. It's the illegal entry into this country that's got to stop. It don't have to slow down. It's got to stop. And to me, I think it's pretty easy prospect, right? You do what Texas is doing in every border state, and you just flat stop it. But we first got to get those liberal politicians out of office because they're destroying our country. And it's good to see a lot of conservative sheriffs are stepping up with some governors and saying, okay, you've crossed the line. Enough's enough.
I agree. I can't agree more with you than what you've said there. I've done my own research on you, and you're an honorable man. You've given a lifetime of service, got a great family, beautiful family.
Thank you.
And now you are running to be Galveston County's next sheriff. And the current sheriff is retiring. So this has become a heated race down there in Galveston County. What are your top, say, 3 agenda items? If you were to be elected sheriff, would you change some things immediately, or or are things kind of down there running a little bit smoothly now with the sheriff that you have in there currently?
Well, in my current position as a major, I'm over our criminal law enforcement bureau. So it's my opinion that, and it sounds a little biased, obviously, because I'm a major and working for the sheriff's office, but I believe the sheriff's office has done a tremendously good job. We have about 555 employees total. We have about a $60 million budget. We house on average between 900 and 1,000 inmates in our jail. Our county population is around 370,000. And, people know that the Galveston County Sheriff's Office is doing a good job. We try to be innovative and progressive. We did have an uptick probably starting around 2019 of some gang violence. And we answered that back by creating an organized crime task force where we took members of several jurisdictions, police officers, and put them all together on a task force team to try to address some of these gang shootings and gang violence and drug activity. And they've done a good job. The task force just last year conducted 875 operations that yielded, I believe, 189 felony arrests, 130 misdemeanor arrests, seized 71 firearms, recovered like $4.1 million in narcotics. So these guys did a really good job. And in addition to that, we started a DART team, which is a direct area response team. And this team goes out probably twice a month, and we target high crime areas, and we kind of just turn the heat up with serving warrants in those areas, making traffic stops, making arrests, just letting that criminal element know that we're there, we're not leaving. And if they want to do business without having the heat of law enforcement, they need to take it somewhere else, because Galveston County is not going to tolerate it. So we've done some really good things at the sheriff's office, and I could go on and on and on. Your original question was what are some of the things that I want to do different? And, recruitment and retention and recruitment is is a big issue for all law enforcement agencies across the nation, really. I know when I went through the police academy in 91, we had close to 30 cadets graduate my academy. Now, law enforcement academies across the nation, you'll be lucky to see 4 or 5 graduate from them. The numbers, the interest in people wanting to, young men and women wanting to become law enforcement officers is just, it's at a critical point. And so you'll take, like for instance, in Galveston County, we have 15, a little bit more than 15 jurisdictional law enforcement agencies. And when you have a law enforcement academy at the community college that's graduating 4 or 5 cadets, you can imagine, and we're all short staffed, you can imagine how we're trying to recruit them, and it's going to end up coming down a lot of times to who pays the most, who has the best schedules. So you have to really be creative to try to attract and recruit employees. So I have some ideas, that I'm going to put in place to try to improve our recruitment and retention. I am a big supporter of, accreditation for a law enforcement agency, and that's a goal that has not been attained yet by the sheriff's office in Galveston County. So I intend on making that a priority, improving our policies and procedures where they align with best practices, along with our promotional processes, improving our mental health deputy division. Mental health and substance abuse is a large part of what drives crime, especially property crimes in our county, and then dealing with our homelessness is something I've got to figure out a way to partner with the community and come up with programs and resources to try to assist in this homeless crisis. And then every sheriff would like to, institute programs, Brian, that would reduce recidivism, where you got the same inmates coming back to the jail time and time and time and time again. The definition of insanity, right? And so we need to come up with some programs in there, maybe some work programs, some educational programs that we can try to get them back on their feet where they don't keep coming back to prison. Now, we both know that there's some that just don't want to be helped. And if they need a place to stay, we're going to provide them a place to stay.
Mm-hmm. There are so many police officers across the country right now that the morale is at an all-time low. And a lot of them are leaving. Mm-hmm. They're leaving the police force behind. They're saying, take this job and shove it. I've got a camera in my face 24/7, 365. I can't do my job. My hands are tied. And when I do finally do my job and I arrest this known criminal who's got a track record a mile long, the DA will just let them out. No bail, just right back out on the street. Now, when this happens over and over and over again, one of those times, the criminal is going to come out guns a-blazing. And that's how police officers lose their life. It's typically on a 5th or 6th or 7th time that they're getting arrested, and they know that maybe this time they're going to be going to prison. Mm-hmm. Without getting released. But how can you improve the morale in your county? And I'm not saying your county has a low morale. What I'm saying is that your deputies are seeing what's going on in the country about this whole arrest and then they get released. Does it kind of change how they look at their career and their job if they were to ever get into an instance like that, what they would do, or perhaps what sort of decisions that they would make after a crisis moment came where they had to discharge their firearm?
Yeah. So go back to your original question. So I believe there is a direct correlation between the low numbers of cadets that we see that are signing up for academies and the number of people that are leaving law enforcement once they're in there, and then how the media portrays law enforcement. So when you add all this stuff together, it seems pretty dismal. Me as a as a 17 or 18-year-old, just getting out of high school, thinking about getting out of high school and trying to figure out what I want to be. When you see this on the news, on these social media apps, they're showing these First Amendment auditors always in officers' faces, with cameras, and it's hard for there not to be a mass exodus of people leaving law enforcement, or morale being very low, or us seeing low numbers. I mean, that seems like a recipe for disaster, and that's exactly what we're faced with here. And so law enforcement officers want to know that they're going to be supported, they're going to be advocated for, but they also respect being held accountable, right? Because we can't have a bunch of people out there, just renegades going off and just, it's dishing out street justice. Those days are gone. You got to be held accountable. You got to be professional. You got to be respectful. But you can do all that and still be tough on crime, and, uphold our laws. But man, it's a challenge for any executive level law enforcement officer to try to recruit and retain employees with all the outside factors of the things that we just mentioned. And then you throw on top of that, that you do find yourself involved in an officer involved shooting or something like that. All the judgment that comes with that, prejudgment, before anybody even knows the facts, and then whether or not your agency gets you adequate support, for that traumatic event. There's a myriad of things that attribute to someone just throwing up their hands and giving up law enforcement. But I think a lot of it starts with leadership, whether that's good or bad. And you've got to be able to connect with your first responders, and you got to be able to understand where they're coming from, and you got to support them, and to the best of your ability. I mean, they're your number one asset, and if you don't treat your employees like your number one asset, they're not going to hang around for you. They're either going to get out of the profession altogether, or they're going to go somewhere else. And so, I obviously, as a sheriff, and me previously, as a chief and currently as a major, serving the public is our absolute number one responsibility. But man, advocating for your employees is something I have a track record of people knowing, because I'm going to treat you with respect. I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be consistent. And where you stand with me. So I've gotten positive responses from my leadership style. And it's something that I'm proud of. It's not something that I went out and, got trained to do, Brian. It was something that you just do. And you're a former Marine. You know that, when you're following a good leader and when you're not following a good leader, right? And when you come across those good ones, you do anything for them. Their heart and their soul and their mind and their mission is in the same place as yours. And that's, people know I'm real.
Sure. Yeah. What you see is what you get with Ray Nolen. And, people need to know that they can come up and talk to you. And it's important to know that, hey, look, I'm going to have my deputies' backs here. Even everybody else is, throwing them under the bus and this and that and slander. And, like you said, the media, they portray you guys as the boogeyman. And that's not a very healthy way to to operate and live in the United States of America. Again, it's
yeah. But as long as you're leaving me standing on solid ground, I'll defend you to a fault almost. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's all about leadership at the highest levels. And, if you got, a happy sheriff and somebody out there that's doing the right thing, that's protecting the community and, protecting the deputies, they're going to work hard for you. You're going to have that high morale, and the safest communities are the communities that have very high police morale, because those folks want to go to work. They want to protect the community. They want to serve the community. And it shows. There's
officers that the officers that have high morale, Brian, it's been proved, that they're proactive. They're patrolling their neighborhoods.
Right.
They're patrolling their districts actively. If morale's low, they're all reactive, right?
Mhm.
They're just sitting in a parking lot somewhere waiting for a call, and they'll answer their calls, but that's all you're going to get out of them.
Mhm.
My law enforcement officers know I expect the best out of them, right? And I'm only going to get the best out of them if their morale's high. And I'll do whatever I can to keep their morale as high as I can. And usually, money's a temporary motivator, Brian. It's strong leadership that keeps people coming, proud to put that uniform on, come to work, stand for what the Galveston County Sheriff's Office stands for, and protect and serve our people because they feel empowered by their leadership.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah,
and
you want
supported by their community. Don't let me forget to say that. Yes.
sure. Yeah, you want to go out and do the right thing to protect your community. That's what you get paid to do, and really at the end of the day, these police officers, the majority of these police officers aren't signing up because they're going to get rich. They're
No.
doing this because they've been called to serve. And there's a lot. We have so many great servants in this country that want to make this country a better place for you, me, and everybody else here in America. Now, you had mentioned, high morale. They're out patrolling. They're out looking for crimes in progress or a potential, theft that could go down. And they're just kind of keeping an eye on there. That's where the protecting comes into place. And that's where you're going out and you're preventing them before they even happen. And then you have the patrol deputies that are just sitting in a parking lot and they're just waiting for the next call because they're just punching the clock. Yeah, everybody hates me. The department is, everybody's leaving, so why should I go out and try, right? And that's, I think, what's going on in America right now is that one, we have departments that are losing people every single day at a rate we've never seen, and violent crime is through the roof because they no longer have the amount of police officers that they need for the police to go out there to patrol the streets to prevent these crimes from happening. So everybody now in America, I've been on probably over 120, 130 ride-alongs in my life. I have a lot of friends with the SWAT teams across the country, as well as patrol officers that I've been out on.
Mhm.
And you go from call to call to call to call. I mean, they don't have time anymore to
Yeah.
just even sit, even if they wanted to. I mean, it's like, okay, I'm done with this call. Now I hit the button, I'm clear, and boop, any
Yeah.
units available to go here. And then that's why they're waiting sometimes 30, 45 minutes, an hour for a call to service, because that's what happens when you lose police officers. And again, and I know I'm talking broad brush here, not specifically in Galveston County, but it is important because you never know. You're one crisis national moment away from being that next department that says, "Oh God, something happened in Galveston County. We had a police shooting, and now the media is saying it's this and that." And before you know it, there's smoke and fire everywhere, and you're just trying to pick up the pieces. What inspired you to run for sheriff?
Wow. So I never have been a politician in my life, never aspired to be a politician, Brian. I'm just a lifelong public servant, both as a paramedic and a police officer. Most of that in, leadership positions because I just love leadership and I love serving. Um, and when our current sheriff announced a little over a year ago that he was going to be retiring, I, we were all very saddened to hear that. We tried to guilt him into running another term, but he said after 41 years that was enough, And so we knew that my opponent had, who was a constable in our county, had put the word out that he was going to be running for sheriff once the current sheriff decided he wasn't going to run anymore. And so, but I was hoping that someone, had some aspirations in the agency. We had a pretty big agency, like I said, 555 strong. And so I was hoping somebody would step up, that was a little younger than me, that maybe aspired to want to be the sheriff and for a long time, and wanted to get into the political realm of that. But nobody was stepping up, and I kept having a lot of my men and women that work under me come to me and say, Major, would you please run for sheriff? And I was like, oh no, guys, I appreciate it. I'm honored at your confidence in me being a sheriff, but that's just not something I ever wanted to do or wish to do. And then they kept coming at me and asking me if I would do it. And, I came home and talked it over with my wife, and she agreed, that was not something that we wanted to put our families through, because we've seen how, these politicians, what they get put through, running for public office. And then I had someone in county government give me a call and ask me if I had talked to my opponent about staying on and working for him, because he has never worked for the sheriff's office a day in his life, and he needs to surround himself with people that know how to run the sheriff's office. And I said, yeah, have him call me. I'll go to dinner with him. And I went to dinner with him, and I asked him why, he wanted to be the sheriff, and he did not give me one good reason on an executive level, because, the constable's office that he works for, or that where he was the constable, only has about 7 or 8 employees. So he's only ever had about 7 or 8 employees. And I believe 9 different law enforcement agencies he's worked for, been terminated from 2 of them. And so as I sat across from him, Brian, and I'm thinking about he could potentially come in unopposed and take the reins of the sheriff's office with little to no experience in criminal law enforcement, especially at the executive level. I can't sit by idly and watch this happen. So I'm going to have to run. And I came home and told my wife that I was running. And of course she was like, are you serious? And I said, yeah, I feel a calling. I've had so many people tell me I need to run, and we're going to let's do this, and let's leave no stone unturned. Let's leave everything on the field. And if we're successful, then I'm going to be honored at the nod, and I'm going to take the reins as sheriffs, and and although the sheriff Trosset's done a good job, I'm going to try to put my own ideas and goals into place, and we're going to try to take this sheriff's office to the next level. And that's how it happened. It happened, and I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version, because politically it was a little bit more ugly than that when I had that conversation with that county official. But I was just I felt like God was putting it on my heart, Brian, and it was something that I was being asked to do, and I'm doing it.
Those make for the best people, the folks that didn't want this job. I didn't want this job, but I had to take it to protect my department, to protect my deputies, to protect what we have built, to protect the community relationships that we have forged for so long. We can't have an outsider come in and burn this sucker down. Again, we talk about morale. This guy's a small town cop. Your opponent isn't even a Galveston County Sheriff deputy.
Never has been.
And he's been terminated from 2 other departments. What? Again, you look at some of these races across the country, and you're like, what is the motivation here? And it's all power. It's all power, but it's power in the wrong way. You can use power in a really good way, in a positive way. You could also use it in a wrong way, power to where that's not what you want to see. That's everything that would be against the Constitution. That's, lobbying and all that other bad stuff that comes along with power, breeds corruption. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, you got a scandal, and then, and then you're just trying to pick up the pieces. And you are right, man. You throw your hat in the ring, and, you're an honorable man, and here they come, lies and slander and mudslinging. It's got to make you feel absolutely just hopeless and helpless at times. And I know there's a lot of prayer involved in doing things like you're doing and running for the Galveston County Sheriff. I mean, that's a big job, but again, it's who you surround yourself with. You've got a beautiful family. You've got a lot of support. You have inside support of current employees, deputies who go out there and will work hard for you every single day. So,
yeah, that was what one of the, some of the things they were coming to me and they saying, Major, would you please run? And I'd tell them, I'm honored that the idea of you thinking I'd be a good sheriff, but it's just not something I'm interested in. And they'd say, well, Major, you treat everybody with respect, and you're so professional, and you have so much integrity, and you would make a great sheriff, and that kind of stuff, man, that's impactful to have your employees say about you, because not every manager, person in leadership gets that kind of feedback, and so that was powerful for me. And then to know that, I was being endorsed by our current sheriff and the two sheriffs before him was very, very impactful. But man, this has been a tough journey, Brian. I'll tell you that. I've never done anything like this before, so I really didn't know what to expect. And, and then after 3+ decades of being in public safety, I thought I knew politics, but you really don't know how ugly they are until you get up close and personal. And then you really don't understand the impact that they have on your family. And that's the most disheartening part about it, is that, your family, they're having to hear these lies about you, and listen to people try to discredit your record. And they want to naturally defend you, but we just have to continue to stay above reproach and take the high road and put it in God's hands. And at the end of the day, if it's meant to be, it's going to be.
Absolutely. You said that very well. And there is a lot of anxiety, that is involved in, things like this, on every level. If you're running for Congress or Senate or even for the school board, there's always going to be somebody out there that's going to slander you, that's going to want to take you out. And again, it's no way to operate. I know if I was running for a elected position, the last thing I would do is mudsling in any opponent, because I believe that, you kill them with kindness. But if they come out and they're totally doing everything the opposite way, and your kids are seeing this information and all this propaganda, if you will, that's not fair for kids to see, and because they know it's not true. It's a lie. So why would you want to elect somebody that's going already out there and putting lies out there? That means that their integrity is absolutely shot to begin with, and they're already telling you who they are without them telling you who they are, because actions are louder than words. Now, I want to get to something here. I know you got to go out and block walk today, and you're doing an amazing job, and we sincerely appreciate you sitting down with us on this Sunday morning here. But I got one more really important segment here that I want to get to, and that is discussing the stance on what it is to be a constitutional sheriff.
Right. So to be a constitutional sheriff, obviously, what it says is that you're the first line of defense, and we talked about that earlier with protecting we the people's rights. A constitutional sheriff is someone that believes in the Constitution, supports the Constitution, and is willing to give their life to protect the citizens they serve, to protect that Constitution. One of the things that I saw that was very inspirational to me was during COVID in Galveston County, because the governor had put out an executive order saying that, we were going to there was going to be closing businesses, and there was going to be the mask mandate and the 6 foot, distancing and all that stuff. And our sheriff called us all, his command staff, all into the conference room, and we get in there, and he he had made a bunch of copies of this, and he hands them around the table, and he goes, I want y'all to take a few minutes and read this. And we read it, and he said, Has everybody read it? We said, yes, sir. And he goes, so I want y'all to hear right now from me, straight from my mouth, that we are not going to be enforcing anything on this piece of paper, right? We're not going to be assisting or enforcing shutting down businesses, mask mandates, anything on this thing. And we were so proud of him for taking that stance, right? As a conservative law enforcement executive level leadership, because it's unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional. And we had, I at the time I was a patrol captain, and I had several people that would call me and say the dispatchers would receive a call from a citizen in a restaurant. This is when they finally started letting restaurants open back up, but they were still requiring the mask mandate and the 6-foot distancing rule. And they would call dispatch to come to send a deputy to a store, or a restaurant, because there was either a patron there or a waiter or someone that's not wearing a mask, and they would want a deputy to respond. And when the dispatcher would tell them that we're not sending one, they would want to speak to a supervisor. So she would forward it to me, and I'd get on the phone, and she would tell me, she's at a restaurant and the waiter's not wearing a mask, or, people are walking in not wearing masks, and she wants a deputy to respond. And it was almost like, somebody was playing a prank on you, that you were actually getting this phone call, that we were at this point in America where we had got to people calling and complaining because somebody wasn't wearing a mask. And so I said, ma'am, are you in that restaurant on your own free will? Are you being held against your will? And she said, no, sir. And I said, well, then get up and leave, right? Just, it's simple as that. Just get up and leave. But, and you would think it would be that easy, Brian, but people are somewhat delusional sometimes, when they get caught up in these, I guess, these situations where, we have something like a nationwide epidemic, and then you see the whole debates on whether to get the vaccine or not to get the vaccine. And I'm going to lose my job, if I don't get the vaccine. Constitutional sheriff at those times, and we hope that they don't come up, Brian, very often. But when those times happen, that's when people are sitting back saying, who's going to protect me here? Right. Mm-hmm. They've never thought about their sheriff before, because they've lived in incorporated areas, cities, incorporated cities where they don't really have much interaction with the sheriff. Then they're thinking that their police chief may or may not, enforce this or not enforce this. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately going to be up to the county sheriff on being the ones that protect your constitutional rights. And so it's imperative. And I know we use the Second Amendment I think a lot of people use the Second Amendment as a vehicle to pander to the voter, because they don't think there's ever really going to be a Second Amendment infringement, right? But we saw recently in New Mexico where the governor had put out an order that she was going to do a gun grab, and it was like, wow, everybody was like really, their ears were perking up to this, because even if they didn't live in New Mexico, it's like this stuff is just stuff that we thought, like UFOs or something. We thought that it could potentially happen, but this is really happening. Mm-hmm. And then we saw that Albuquerque sheriff stand up and say, Governor, with all due respect, there won't be any enforcing of any gun grabbing on my watch. And that is a prime example of how we need our sheriffs to stand up when the time comes to protect our constitutional rights. And with me, you're not going to have any bigger advocator of someone protecting your constitutional rights. And I tell people, Brian, that my definition of gun control is to use a firm grip.
And breathe.
There you go.
Border crisis. We all know what's going on our southern border, and Galveston County, not very far away from this ongoing crisis. For folks that are listening, Nationally, Galveston County is basically right there. It borders Harris County in Houston. So it's basically South Houston, Galveston County, and then all the way down to the ocean front there. Now, have you noticed an uptick in crime in your county over the last 3 years?
I don't believe so. We have obviously, conducted some operations on some narcotics operations where some illegals were part of that operation and were arrested. But as far as, violent crimes, I haven't seen a lot of uptick, and that being directly related to the border crisis.
Mm-hmm.
But we have had like I told you earlier, we've had people go down and assist with smuggling people across the border. We had a arrest at the border for a human smuggling case which was really sad, because we had a smuggler that was arrested, and he had several immigrants in his vehicle when he was stopped, and he had his school district ID, Brian, hanging from the rearview mirror. This guy was a math teacher at a school district locally here, and when he was interviewed about why he was doing this, he said that he was trying to make some extra money to put a down payment on a new home for him and his family. And that was really, sad to hear that he had gotten to a point to where the only way he thought that he could make some extra money to help put a down payment on a new home was to go be a coyote for a while, and gave up his whole career, right, on that, in making that bad decision. And so there are victims out there, there are victims out there because of this border crisis, not just on a criminal side, but many facets of the negative impact that border crisis has. When we have 5,000 a day coming across, there's going to be an impact. There's an impact in schools. There's an impact in businesses. There's an impact in the safety of our communities. We know that they're bringing, drugs over. There's fentanyl being brought across. There was a time where, I believe in 2020, where Galveston County was ranked number 2 in fentanyl overdoses. But through our efforts at the sheriff's office, with this task force that I mentioned earlier, with the push to get Narcan out there, with the officers, with the communities, to really turn up the heat on crime, we're not even ranked now as fentanyl overdoses are concerned. So, that there is an impact, obviously. Now, has it slowed down? My deputies have told me that they've went from, apprehending, and I told you this earlier, hundreds and hundreds a day to, less than, 5 or 6 a day, 10 a day. But we know that now they know they can't go through Texas. They're going around. They're going around.
Sure.
But we need those other border states to partner up with us. But yeah, the border crisis is obviously impacting every county, I think, but your big metropolitan counties are the ones that are being impacted the most. And that's your Travis County, your Bexar County, your Harris County. Those are the ones being impacted the most. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm proud of it, and that's why I mention it again. Galveston County was one of the first counties to go down there and help with. And look, let's face it, the Galveston County Sheriff's Office is not the biggest sheriff's office in the state, right? We don't have a whole lot of resources that we can just send down to the border to assist, because our number one priority is taking care of Galveston County.
Sure.
But we were able to send, 3 or 4 deputies down there on a continuous rotation deployment to assist. But when you have big counties like Harris County, that have just so many resources and they're not down there assisting, that should speak volumes to you.
Absolutely. Leadership starts at the very top. And, it's, like you said, my primary goal is to protect the citizens of Galveston County, but you're still a county in Texas, and the secondary protection would be the state of Texas. How can you protect your citizens of Galveston County if the state of Texas doesn't have any sovereignty? So you would think that you would need to protect the state's sovereignty first
and
you can really start to protect the citizens of your county. Now, there has been a lot of national uproar lately with so many DAs letting out and completely letting off illegal aliens after they have committed violent crime. Now, in their cities and states, they state that, well, we couldn't put them on an ICE hold because they were 30 to 60 days out. So we're a sanctuary state, we're a sanctuary city, so we're just going to let them off. And it's really created a ton of uproar across the country. In Galveston County, what is the process of arresting and holding an illegal alien?
So Galveston County Jail is actually a 287G processing location. So we train our deputies to go through the same processes that Border Patrol goes through in processing an illegal, and sending them to. So when the hold gets put on, first they come in and we find out that they're undocumented. And then our deputies will put them through a 287G process where they will process them, notify Border Patrol. They'll put a hold on them. It'll depend on what their charge is, right, of how long they'll be with us. Because it's sometimes, they could be with us for a while if they've committed some state charges and they've got to go through our judicial process. But eventually they're going to get turned over to the Border Patrol. And so a lot of jails don't have that process, right? So they don't have 287G trained personnel to do that. And so sometimes these people will just come into the jail, Brian, and they'll get processed on a state charge, under the given name and date of birth. And then whenever that disposition occurs, they're just going to be, they can either bond out or they're going to be released. And there won't be really a hold put on them because they really didn't go through the process to even find out that they were undocumented. So we're proud to have, not every jail has one, but a lot of the progressive jails do have the 287G program where we can run everybody through this program and find out whether or not they're here legally or illegally, and then we can make sure we turn them over to Border Patrol. Now, you draw your own conclusions about what happens when they get to Border Patrol now, right? We used to think that, that was an automatic, exit out of the country, but now we know that to be different under this current liberal administration at the federal level. But we do our due diligence there. And I will tell you that, a lot of people think that sheriffs have some kind of say on how long someone stays in jail, and they absolutely do not. There are two ways to get out of jail, and only two ways to get out of jail when you're put in a county jail, and that's either by a bond or a court order. And those are the only two ways that you can get out, and both of those are set by judges. So in any jail, in any county, whether you have bonds that are set high or no bonds that are enacted, all of that is done by your local judges, right? I was at an event the other day, and there was a judge that was the speaker, and she's running for re-election, and there was a lot of people in the audience, and I thought it came down to questions and answers, and I thought I would just raise my hand and let her go on the record saying that for this audience that sheriffs had no say in whether or not somebody got out of jail or not, because my opponent had made another false accusation, that I let a bunch of inmates out of jail during COVID, which couldn't have been any further from the truth. You don't get out of jail without a court order or a bond, and all the sheriff does is just hold the prisoners. It's a temporary detention facility. Right, it's a pretrial detention facility is what it is, and the judges decide who's going to be in jail and how long they're going to be in jail. We're just the keepers of the jail. So she said, yes, absolutely. The sheriff has no say in how long someone stays in jail. And if they ever do, y'all please let me know, because we got a bigger problem on our hands than we know of, because your district attorney's office and your judges, they accept charges and they set bonds, and they decide when somebody gets out of jail. But a lot of times, Brian, the sheriffs, especially during election times and stuff, you'll have sheriffs say, I'll run a tough jail and I will keep people in jail or whatever. They have nothing to do with that. That's just pandering to the voter.
Pandering. I've heard that word before.
Mm-hmm.
One final question for you, Major. Our country right now is going through a massive mental health crisis. Now, when elected to be the next Galveston County Sheriff, how will you address the mental health needs of not only your deputies, but to your constituents in Galveston County?
Thank you, Brian. That's a good question, and I touched on it a little bit earlier. So Galveston County was one of the first law enforcement agencies in the state of Texas, if not the first law enforcement agency in the state of Texas, to implement a mental health division. So what we did is we created a division where we sent law enforcement officers to specialized mental health training. And then we created a law enforcement mental health division, and all they do is respond to mental health crisis calls. And when they get out there, they go through this series of assessments to determine whether or not these people need to be taken to a hospital. They try to a treatment facility. They try to get them to go voluntarily, but depending on the state of the emergency and the crisis, they will sometimes just have to take you against your will under an emergency detention order and take you to a treatment facility where they can get you treated. So an example of what that would be is like our patrol division would be dispatched to a disturbance. They would get out there and they would find out, that there's a known mental health patient that's been non-compliant with his medication for, let's say 3 weeks or something like this. And he is in a manic state. He's breaking stuff. He's in the house. He's assaulting family members. Normally, if that happened in a jurisdiction of a law enforcement agency that didn't have a mental health division, that person's going to jail, right? And I think we can all agree that, this is 2024, and the appropriate place for somebody that's a known diagnosed mental health patient that has not been on their medications for 3 or 4 weeks, the last place they need to be is in a jail cell. They need to be in a treatment facility. So what we do is we're able, when that patrol deputy responds, finds out the scope of the problem they've got, then they get on the radio and say, I need a mental health deputy out here. They respond out there, and then together they go through the assessment and, mitigate that call based on whatever the needs are. And a lot of times it's transporting that mental health patient, what we refer to as a client, to a mental health facility so they can get the appropriate treatment. We've been doing that for, 40 to 50 years. And I just want to take that division and build on it. Right now, our county is trying to build another 20 or 30 bed facility in Galveston County that's going to be dedicated just to mental health patients, because right now we're having to transport them to Houston a lot of times because we don't have any other facilities in Galveston County. So that is progressive, right? That's going to really be a good resource for us to be able to keep those deputies in the county once they take them to this facility, and then they're right back in service. But we do have a little bit need for a couple more of those deputies. if I can get the funding for that. And then on a bigger scale, Brian, and I won't go too long on this, but on a bigger scale, that's being responsive, right? And we have to be responsive to these emergencies, these crisis needs, but we also got to figure out a way to be proactive, right? And work on partnering with the communities and developing programs and resources for families to reach out to, for patients to reach out to, that we can help get them some help, because a lot of times these people are off their medications, Brian, because they don't have the money to afford them, or they don't have the transportation to go get them. And so those are the areas that we got to work on to try to help the prevention of it. We got a pretty good handle on how to respond to the crisis after it's already happening. How do we challenge ourselves and think outside the box and learn how to be preventive?
Yeah, preventative maintenance. That's get out in front of it, right?
Exactly.
And it sounded like what you just explained to me is a very good model and a blueprint that could really be used nationally. I mean, obviously, when you're encountering these folks that are having probably one of the worst days of their life, you're not going to destroy them. You're going to try to get them the help that they need. But I want to take this a step further here, if you have one more moment.
Sure.
Post-traumatic stress is an epidemic right now going on in the country. Everybody suffers from some sort of trauma. If you're a human, you've been through trauma, and we all go through it in different ways, different scenarios, different stories, different circumstances. First responders see it every single day. They are put in traumatic type situations. And these are special men and women that are out there doing a very hard and difficult job for very little pay for what they have to endure and see every single day. Now, as a sheriff, how would you ensure that your deputies get the mental health treatment they need to keep them fit and happy to continue to serve and to get them perhaps the help that they need? Because I know there's a lot of deputies and a lot of police officers out there on a national level that are going through a lot of hard times right now, again, with the arrest and releasing from corrupt DAs, and then everything that they encounter every single day, whether it's children, car accidents, shootings, stabbings, rapes, all this stuff that they see, it could really weigh down on somebody. How do we get those good men and women the help they need to continue on to protect and to serve their communities?
Yeah, great question, Brian. So first of all, the mindset of looking out after each other's mental and physical well-being is something that needs to be trained, and it's a culture that needs to be advocated for, right? And kind of expected. Constantly be monitoring your coworkers, your subordinates. Make sure that they constantly know, that we're here for you. We have programs in place for you. But like sergeants, right? Sergeants are a key role in this because they're the first line supervisors out there in the trenches, and they know their staff like they know their own family members, and what they've been exposed to, right? So if they just went on that, that 2-month-old sudden infant death syndrome call, and they just had a child of their own 2 months ago or 6 months ago, those need to be clues, Brian, right? Even when you try to put on that tough guy act, that I'm Teflon, I'm bulletproof, nothing phases me. Those are the ones you really have to watch, right? And so we have to foster an environment and be monitoring ourselves constantly through, as a woven thread in our culture and our fabric to know when someone has either been exposed to something that could trigger some PTSD, or something's going on in their personal life, right? Where they're not the same person that them to be. And then we got programs available for you, right? And historically we use our employee assistance program, but I have found for first responders, that's a tough group to try to get them to entrust you and to tell you their real feelings, right? And so when you're having, a 10-year veteran law enforcement officer that's been exposed to something, let's say as a group, let's say that this didn't just happen. Let's say we had something horrific happen, like a school shooting, right? Where there's been many first responders. So then you start trying to do debriefings as a group, and you notice that two or three of them are just not responding positively to it. They're struggling. They're clammed up. They're not right. And so when you send them to an employee assistance program, while we really appreciate those resources that the county human resources provides, we're dealing with a different breed when you're dealing with law enforcement and fire and paramedics. They just don't open up to civilians that easy. So we started, and I'm actually a board member of the Galveston County Crisis Incident Stress Management Team. And man, these are our peers that have gone, either prior law enforcement, that have gone out and got their credentials. And when they come in and talk to you, you trust them. You trust them. They've walked in your shoes. They've been where you've been. A lot of times they want to include your spouse. If that's the case, you have a spouse. So you're doing couples therapy, debriefings, things of that nature. But I tell people, when I go out and talk to groups about our Galveston County Incident Stress Management Team, I came up in EMS and law enforcement where if you talked about something that was bothering you, a call that you had ran earlier that's bothering you, you were told to suck it up, and just don't think about it. Don't talk about it. Each bad call will replace the last. So if this one's bothering you right now, just hang in there. And when you run the next bad one, you won't think about the one before that. And man, when you say that now, when I hear myself say that now, that couldn't sound any more unhealthy, right? But that's how it was back then. You didn't talk about it. You didn't ask for help. Now I'm so proud today that they touch on these things during their law enforcement academies. We touch on it in their field training. And we make sure they know loud and clear that there's help for them. There's resources out there for them, and they're part of our family, and we're not going to let them fall.
Absolutely. And folks, 99.9% of police officers out there have their hearts and minds in the right place. And, again, people often, don't understand that police officers and sheriff deputies and constables have hearts, they have emotions, they have families, and they're out there to make a living, to try to do the best job that they can every single day with everything that they have to face. So it's really, no surprise, when you talk about, mental health and post-traumatic stress and, veteran and first responder suicide at an all-time high. So we need to look out for, for those who are looking out for us, if you will. And with that, Major Ray Nolen, we wish you nothing but the best here on March 5th. That's right, Super Tuesday. Get out and vote for Ray Nolen. And look, you, in my eyes and in my opinion, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say that you are the most qualified candidate that is running for Galveston County Sheriff. And that is why you have my endorsement on the Today with Tally podcast, sir. And again, we wish you nothing but the best. And I commend you and I congratulate you on your successful, career, well over 30 years in law enforcement, and the leadership that you provide of Galveston County.
Thank you, Brian. Everybody stay safe and God bless.
Yes, sir. Folks, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the program. It has never been easier to listen to this podcast. We are on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Simply search Today with Tally. Also learn more about me and my personal story, and perhaps even get my new book at BrianTally.com. That's BrianTally.com. Folks, remember to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Until next time for the Today with Tally podcast, this is Brian Tally. Good night, Semper Fi. God bless.
This is the Today with Tally podcast.